Do you ever fancy model? Is there ever any relationship, so to speak of, any weird occurrences, that kind of thing? You get the drift. It's a taboo subject, potentially. Welcome back, ladies and jelly spoons. We are back with another Confessions of a Photographer. I am said photographer, so this will be my opinion. It'll be my ideas about how I think and what I do, which obviously doesn't represent everybody, but you might get an idea. So, question. Do you ever fancy models? Is there ever any relationship, so to speak of? It's a taboo subject, potentially. Do you ever fancy models? Yes, of course you do. You're human. You might see someone and you are attracted to them. Now, I am demisexual, which means I don't really have an interest in people unless I get to know them and I want to be with them. So it's less effective for me because, most models are strangers to me. When I first shoot them, I have no idea who they are. They just turn up. We work together. They bugger off. It's that simple. Do you find people attractive? Of course you do. Everyone finds people attractive. And you could fancy them in that shallow means, I guess. But like I say, being the way I am, not so much. Have I ever been surprised and fancied someone that I didn't think I would? Absolutely. I think, again, love is blind. When someone is a decent person and you get on with them and you enjoy their company and you don't think you're going to fancy them, but you kind of do. But these things happen. However, as a photographer, such as myself, you have to be professional. You're in a position of power. So unless that model is your friend, then at no point should you ever be asking them out. Let's face it, most women don't like asking, so they're not going to do the asking. But my mind in that scenario, it would have to be the model that asks the photographer, because the photographer is the person who is in a position of power. They should be treating the model with respect. They shouldn't even have it on their mind. I mean, again, you're human, so if it is on your mind, it's, you don't act on urges, you understand consent, you just act professional, you understand that you are not there to hit on anybody, you are there to do a job and then go away. But you might work with someone several times, you might become friends, and then you might ask them out. That's life. People meet each other at work all the time. It's absolutely fine. So my advice would be, especially as a studio owner, I quite often have models stay over. Like, we do studio days, studio weekends, and for their convenience, so they haven't got to travel down at like 6 a.m. or leave at 9 p.m. They'll stay over in a spare room, and it's just the most normal thing in the world. Nothing. I've had photographers come up to me and go, "I bet you had loads of them with that model last night." No, they just came. They put their stuff in the room, maybe had a bite to eat. We maybe hung out for a bit so we could get to know each other, so we had a bit of friendly working relationship, and then they went to bed. That's it. I hate to break it to you, it's not really that exciting. Are there predatory photographers who would take that step and take advantage of the situation? Yes, this industry is full of people that way inclined. And again, I don't judge people on their vices. If you were doing that at a club and you are hitting on everything that walks past and that's your jam and you're just a bit of a hoe, then as a photographer, if you want to be that person, then that is your problem. But not when you are in the company of a model who is trusting you to host them for a weekend and to treat them with respect. Just don't do it. It's just stupid. So, as a introverted demisexual, have I ever dated a model? Yes, once. But that was before I really started being a photographer, and it was never anyone I shot. It was just pure coincidence. No, she didn't get me into photography. It was a parallel kind of thing that happened at the same time. But again, I'd say never shot her. It was a mistake. We should have never dated. It was not fun. It was not worthwhile. But that's another story. Would I? Honestly, if I was to sit back and use logic, I have very little interest in being with someone who goes around taking their clothes off for a living. Just doesn't interest me. I understand the irony of me being probably on the more conservative end of fancying people and treating people with respect, so I'm not hitting on them, so I understand that it doesn't happen yet. As a bit of an old school romantic, it's not really something I look for in someone, and I think it takes a certain kind of philosophical, psychological, personality type mind to want to be a model, to do that kind of thing. And don't get me wrong, I have met some models who do full art nude, who don't do it for kicks, they don't do it for attention, they do it because they like the art, and that art also pays them money, and they will only accept jobs that they consider to be art nude and not crude and not shitty and messy, and some models will only work to fashion levels. So yeah, it's a shitty generalisation to have, but typically I'm not interested in models. But would I date a model, even a model who did art nude? Yes, if I thought they were in it for the right reason and the moment presented itself properly and I wasn't taking advantage, and vice versa. And yeah, it's it's just one of those things. People are human. So in conclusion, have I ever fancied a model? Yes, but I never really considered it to be realistic and something that might happen. They were just there, and I thought, you know what, they're pretty cool. I get on with them really well. They're just not what I expected. They're easy, down to earth, but I also understand that people who barely know each other present different sides of themselves to people, just to, as a defense mechanism, as just a way of being friendly, and they're obviously not going to go, here are all my vices, here's who I am and what I'm really about, and these are the weird things that I like, so this is the stuff that you can actually, have substance in what may or may not be something one day. So I don't really take that kind of stuff seriously, to be honest. Yeah, as a professional, honestly, you walk in a room, you see one naked person, who's the next naked person, who's the next naked person. It's not sexual, and that might be mind-blowing for conservative people who are clueless and don't understand the industry, who think that a boudoir shoot is porn and the whole world's come crashing down and everyone's morally corrupt. And or the polar opposite to that, like a general guy who's got the horn, who goes out on the piers every weekend, who is trying to constantly pull and shag women. When I go in the studio and see someone in lingerie and whatnot, it's just someone in lingerie and whatnot, and I do my job and I don't think about it. I am probably so much more concentrated if I'm shooting BTS video on how that video is going to look. If it's my shoot and I'm shooting, I'm like thinking about if the shot's working, if the light's working, how that image is going to look. I'm like money blue, I'm dripping, but in sweat, because I'm just so mentally engaged with what needs to happen to make that image worth my while. Because I don't want to take a picture for no reason. I don't take an image for no reason. That image has to be usable, and sometimes you work with people who are more difficult and it's not so usable, and sometimes you're really engaged on how you can manipulate the model into giving you more, how you can manipulate the lighting into making it look more professional, and that's actually really mentally tiring, and you're just like dripping in sweat thinking about it. And it's not an attractive thing, like when you're like bawling sweat in front of a woman who's like half naked in front of you, and don't get me wrong, there might be some girls out there who get their kicks. I don't doubt it for a second. I've probably met a couple of models who get their kicks out of having attention, out of being half nude in a room with a guy or a few guys. On the most part, that isn't the case. On the most part, photographers aren't weird, creepy, like invasive kind of meh. Don't get me wrong, there are hobbyists who photograph pretty half-naked women because they want to be in the company of pretty half-naked women. But as a proper photographer, you are just so engaged in what is going on that what they are wearing, or rather what they're not wearing, is honestly irrelevant. And as I said earlier, I don't really find the whole concept of like, whew, I'm naked in front of people attractive. I don't care. I just don't care. It's not something I want in a person. So I don't necessarily find it attractive and exciting and interesting, and I just want to do my bloody job, So, yeah. Do you fancy people based on attraction? Yes, even as a demisexual, of course you do. Is it ever going to lead anywhere? Is it really something you dwell on? Is it ever become a problem in a shoot? No, not really, not ever. You do your job, and then, everyone goes home, and if they have vices at home, that's on them, not my problem. And, yeah, it's the life of being a photographer and a model, really. You just got to treat people with respect, understand consent, control your urges, be professional, be respectful, and be a decent person, and understand that, if the time ain't right, the time ain't right, and you just let shit pass you by. You got to sacrifice, basically, in life. You have to make sacrifices for the things you want, and unless you want to have a reputation for being a horrible fucking dirty sleaze and mistreating people, then when you're in a position of power, when you own a studio, when you're a photographer, don't go hitting on every fucking model that comes into your studio, because you're going to soon get found out. You're soon going to be all over the forums, and you're going to be enemy number one, and probably cancelled. So yeah, there's a lot of photographers out there who have been cancelled, rightly so. Some maybe not so much, because obviously there are a lot of insecure and mentally ill people who would take advantage of that situation and twist it and play the victim on purpose. Dare I say it, you shouldn't victim blame, but there are people out there who are that way inclined too. So you have to have your wits about you. You have to be intelligent, you have to be decent, and don't give people a reason to wrong you. See, when I get in trouble with people, it's normally because I'm too honest and I tell them no and it ain't going to work, and this is the problem, and you won't fit into my wardrobe because my wardrobe's 6 to 10, and then they post a thing. I think like, this photographer's fat shaming me because he says he only shoots women that's 6 to 10, and I was like, hey, it's my wardrobe 6. It's a fact. I can't change reality in a fact. I never at any point judged how you look and mentioned your weight. You chose to be offended because you couldn't fit into my wardrobe. Anyway, that's another story, possibly another confession for another day. I do not know, but this is my opinion on, do people in the industry fancy? Yes, models, photographers get together all the time, probably some that are far more open-minded, more liberal in terms of what their partner does, and in terms of being willing to overstep the mark. But me, no, afraid not. I am pretty fucking boring. I am notoriously single because I just don't really have an interest in anyone, because I prefer my time and money to be my own, and I don't want to waste it on something just because I'm pathetically insecure and I need validation of someone I don't really give a shit about. I just don't need to jump from relationship to relationship. Just doesn't interest me in the slightest. Yeah. And that is the reason I can be so easily unswayed, is that word, by the concept of having just half naked person in front of me. It's just work. Honestly, it's just work. It is that work. Yeah. Sorry if that's not as exciting as you wanted it to be. I'm sure the photographers out there have stories of them being predatory and think it's cool and they tell it to the mates down the pub, but it ain't me. Peace.